Hello and welcome to another edition of Valley Sports Telegram presents the Sports Telegram, where Kenny Hodges and I break down our passions in pro sports and we talk about some of the breaking news. We got a couple of hot topics here before we jump into the NBA Finals. This is going to be an NBA centric, quick little rundown, and we're just going to jump right into this. Um, how dumb do you got to be? Like John Morant, like he he flashed the gun in the club, got suspended, went to counseling, apparently went into some kind of rehab facility, and then apologized, came back, said he learned from it, and here we are a couple months later, and he's caught again. And before I kick it to you, the thing that makes me laugh is when I watched the video, his friend was more like, "Holy crap, did you just flash that gun?" And he like flipped the phone and tried to hide it. And it's like, your friend was looking out for you more than your dumb self.
It's here's the problem for me. It reeks of. I wanted to initially blame a lot of these things on just immaturity, and some of it is immaturity. He's 23 years old, right? But when you look at this pattern of disturbing behavior, it goes beyond just the immaturity. It goes into an ignorance that you don't even understand. You don't have any sort of comprehension of what you are about to lose because you refuse to sort of understand the gravity of your position in life. It is a blessing that at 23 years old, you are about to have a contract kick in next season, where you are getting ready to create generational wealth, where your kids and your kids' kids won't have to work a day in their lives just based on the work that you have put in through 23 years of your life. There are millions and millions of people who work their asses off and will never see a fraction of the money that you are getting ready to make at age 23. You sat there on that damn Jalen Rose puff piece and said, "Oh, I recognize the mistakes that I've made, and I got to be a better example because I'm taking care of my family," and blah, 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 blah. All that BS you sat there and spewed. But I'll take it even a step further, and this is when I saw the video, I said, "You've got to be bleeping kidding me." When your ass got eliminated by LeBron and AD, you sat there in that press conference and said, "All of this shit I'm doing off the court cost my team. It is my fault. I did this. I've created these distractions." You just said that shit. You just said it 2 weeks ago. And then you're sitting in a car, mind you, with a guy who is banned from your home arena for a year because the league couldn't prove it or not. But more than likely, you, being a fake tough guy, got into it with the Indiana Pacers and their road crew, and they were flashing a red beam off from a gun into their. This is the guy that you in the car with. Now, I'm not saying don't hang out with your friends. Yeah, you refer to him as your brother all the time. But even that dude knew you shouldn't be doing this when you flashed the gun. You said these things were self-created problems and things are my fault. And then you turn around and do that. So there's a few things that could be at play here. Either you really do have a substance abuse problem because you got to be high or drunk or out of your damn mind to not understand that, like Jalen Rose said to you, now that you've done this, every eye is on everything you do from this point forward. Mind you, the league is still trying to figure out what to do with a situation in which you may or may not have punched or been involved in punching a 17-year-old in the face 13 times. These are things that are on record. Threatening a champ sports employee or whatever the damn, like, and flashing a gun. You are in Memphis thinking you are above reproach, and now you're about to find out that just how quickly the world can come down around you, because like I told you before we recorded, does this situation not reek of the Gilbert Arenas situation in 2010? When him and Crittenton got into that situation and the league hadn't even decided if they were punishing them yet, because they still needed to figure out what the hell is going on, where it was Wild Wild West in the damn locker room. They didn't even know how to handle it because nobody had ever heard of no shit like that. Like, what are y'all doing with guns in the locker room? There should be nothing but basketballs and sneakers in there. Why does somebody have a bag full of guns? They were still trying to figure that out. And then this dummy decides it was a good idea to mock the situation doing the gun dance in the pregame. That was why they suspended his ass 50 games. Because you decided it was a good idea to mock this league and who is going to protect their image no matter what. They're not going to let one guy make the league look like we're a bunch of thugs here that don't understand the consequences of being in the spotlight. This is what you've done here. You have done the Gilbert Arenas gun dance in the face of Adam Silver. What choice is he going to be left now but to slap you with at least 50 games? Because if they don't give him at least 50 games, if they don't give him half the season, you're going to have people everywhere now looking at the NBA like, okay, what is it going to take him to actually shoot somebody to end up dead in his circumference, in his entourage, for somebody to get hurt? Like, what's it going to take? Because he's not getting it. He's not understanding that you have a responsibility to your team and to yourself to maintain an image. Yeah, guess what? Is it fair that people are under that your life is under a constant microscope, and somebody sat there on that IG live and said, "Oh, this is an opportunity to really get him in trouble"? No, but you did it, so it's all on you, bro. Like, I'm incredibly disappointed, because it just goes to show you, right? Because what was the conversation coming out of that suspension, that bullshit suspension where they retroactively was like, oh, well, he was already gone for 5 games. So really, it's really a 3-game suspension because he went to a rehab facility. Meanwhile, my wife, who is a forensic psychologist and an active therapist, when she heard that, was like, where did he go? Like, who did he talk to for one day that he realized the error of his ways? You can't. The league is going to come down on this young man, and at this point, I'm hoping they do, because they might be the only way to save it.
Yeah. And I'll start to wrap it up with this, because there's not too much more. I can see the league coming as little as 25. That was the number in my head. But yeah, when you compare it to the Gilbert Arenas situation, where he didn't flash it a second time, he did a dance, it was mocking, and here he was dancing, flipped it up, and it was like, yeah, it's almost just as bad. So yeah, I think the floor for what they're doing has to be 25. And
not to cut you off, but Stephen A said that people he spoke to around the league said that they would push for him to get the entire year, just based off of the optics of you making light of how serious this is.
I wouldn't argue against it. I mean, here's the thing. If they come down with 25, they better give me a damn good reason why it's only 25, right? Anything less than 25 is a joke.
Yeah.
Because 25, you're talking a quarter of the season. That's a big chunk. Mm-hmm. But if you start being really serious and not needing an explanation at half and up, and at that point, the NBA doesn't need to explain itself in terms of, hey, this is what's legit. We retroactively gave him some games, and now we gotta, put our foot down. But Just I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. As somebody who carried a firearm for a living not too long ago, you do not mess around with that crap. But I'm gonna take us in and I'm gonna shift us out because time is of the essence. And I'm gonna call this similar. I'm gonna say it's another bonehead move. The Phoenix Suns have fired Monty Williams. It came down on Saturday, I believe, and just out of nowhere to me, I saw it in my feed and I was like, why is this man out of a job? He's done amazing things in Phoenix. They were in the finals last year. Conference finals last year. Sorry. Make sure we say it right. And then go out, they swing, they get AD. AD came to Phoenix to play for the man in a trade that the owner strong-armed. So I don't understand that right there. I'm going to go and I'm going to make this trade my way for a player who wants to come and play for the coach. And that's the reason he wants to come here, is because of this coach. And then when things fall apart because I left my team without any depth, he's the fall guy. That's short-sighted. I'm gonna link it like this. It reeks of what's happening in English football, where they are just cycling through managers left and right because all of a sudden we brought him into a situation, don't even give him time to get comfortable in his own seat, and sack him again because he couldn't make instant progress. Like, you got to give people time to get comfortable, put their stamp on it. But bringing it back here, KD was hurt. They missed a bunch of games. That roster was never fully together all that way. They jumped into the playoffs, and they played okay. But this is also a team that never played any defense. I'd like somebody to tell me that they did. How do you play? How are you a team that doesn't play defense and you expect to beat the Nuggets? First of all. Second, you're eliminating depth off that team, and then you're blaming the coach for not having any depth. You got to give him an offseason to try to fix this, and then you can boot him. But, it's his sandbox. He bought the team. He can do whatever the hell he wants. I'm going to kick it over to you.
Congratulations, Matt Ishbia. You have, in my opinion, become the NBA's version of the Houston Texans. Because in my opinion, watching what you just done with this organization, coming off the heels of Nikola Jokic absolutely should have knocked your stupid ass into the third row if you were going to do something like this. Because that's the guy we're talking about. The guy who was holding the ball and refusing to give it to Jokic in that playoff game. This is the guy who made this decision. A guy who was a two-time coach of the year. A guy who had a 194 and 115 record, 628 winning percentage as the Phoenix Suns head coach. A guy who like you said, because his reputation and perceived him in such a way that a guy like KD said, you know what? I want to go there because that's a guy that I've always admired and wanted to play for. I remember reading after this owner took over, it was either Sham Charania or Chris Haynes, one of those NBA insiders, or might have been Woj, when asked about like the future of direction of the Suns. One of the first things that was said, and I was like, what? Was supposedly that Matt Ishbia was not high, quote unquote, on Monty Williams. Like when he spoke to him, he didn't come away feeling like that was a guy that he wanted, or a guy that he thought that he could win with long term. Does anybody remember what the Phoenix Suns looked like before Monty Williams got there? Like, do we remember? Because Devin Booker was there. Yes. Was he this? No. But I can make the argument that he became this under Monty Williams. I just don't understand why you would make the moves that you made namely the KD move because he came here to play for that guy, and then because y'all didn't have any depth, and like you said, they don't play defense. Yeah, of course they don't play any defense. Your best on-ball defender, you sent his ass to Brooklyn to get KD. The best defender you had off the bench in Cam Johnson went with him in the trade when you got KD. You gave away the pieces of your team that made you a real viable contender. And somehow that's Monty Williams' fault. Oh, also, by the way, Mr. Owner Man, when you took over this team, you know what you didn't solve? The big giant bleeping DeAndre Ayton problem that they've had for the last 2 years, where this guy just wouldn't play for Monty Williams. He wouldn't. He just wouldn't. So my question to you, as I throw it back to you, was this a Monty Williams problem, or was this a DeAndre Ayton problem that, okay, y'all could have solved by letting that man walk out the door and then let the chips fall where they may?
I think it was not a Monty Williams problem, first and foremost. And if I didn't make it clear in my lead-in into this, let me say it again. It was not a Monty Williams problem. And I think it's a regime problem more than anything outside of just the owner, because it was the previous management, and he's probably still there. I don't know. I don't think they fired him yet.
No. James Jones is still there, which, by the way, James Jones, in concert with Monty Williams, was looked at as a promising executive on the rise because of how he helped build that roster. But this guy came and bought the team and then immediately said, no, this doesn't work. I want KD. I want to make a splash. Let's just tear down what you built just to get this one guy. And then you turned around and looked at Monty Williams like, oh, no, this is your fault when it didn't work.
Yeah. Now, but, James Jones also is the reason they kept DeAndre Ayton last summer when they could have let him walk. I mean, Detroit signed him to that ridiculous offer sheet. I think it was a ridiculous offer sheet. And they let him go. Let him go. Take the draft picks. Take the compensation. Let him go. Because he was not worth it. He hadn't really shown that he was turning the corner. He was coming along, but how freaking long do you got to come along before they realize you're not the answer? Look, I'll put it this way, okay? Dwight Howard left the Magic, came to the Lakers, and everybody thought he was the next great big man. He spent 1 year in LA and ran. You know what's funny is the moment they let him leave, I mean, the billboards were up and everything, but I think they knew he was leaving. It was clear that Dwight Howard is not a franchise center that you build around. It's clear that DeAndre Ayton is not a franchise player you build around. And it is becoming clear by looking at his work ethic. And that was the same thing we were talking about 10 years ago with Howard. It was clear his work ethic wasn't there. So you look at this man, he's loafing, he's this, he's that. Oh, they thought they figured out a way to unlock him, only for him to what? Turn around and say, I got paid.
The issues with this team began last year when Monty Williams had the balls to look at him and say, you aren't working as hard as the rest of everyone else. You aren't doing the things that we need you to do. Now, granted, is this a guy that clearly has an opinion of himself and thinks he should be number one somewhere else? That's why he signed that offer sheet. He was ready to go somewhere and be a star. But here's the problem. The only way to prove you're a star is to go out and do the work that stars have to do. Right? You want to be the number one option, because I feel like that's sort of the problem that sort of developed in Golden State too with Jordan Poole. He got paid and then all of a sudden decided, oh, well, I got paid, so that must mean I get more shots. No, that doesn't mean you get more shots. It means we paid you to be what Sean Livingston was, because we expect you to fill that sort of role or that Andre Iguodala role, and you're 24. So we'll pay you because we want you to do that for the next 4 years, and take the load, lessen the load on our star players because you're the young piece. But clearly, not everybody's built for those moments. So, like I said, now the rumors are coming out that I guess Coach Bud is number one on the target list for them to bring in. And I'm like, you think he's going to fix this if you don't give him a roster? This is a man that couldn't figure out that he needed to not take his center off the floor when you were about to close the game out when Miami only had one option, which was to throw the ball up in the air. Like, Coach Bud got himself fired in 2 different places because that man can't make adjustments when his roster dictates it. So good luck with that. Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, look, I still have all the respect for Mike Budenholzer. You know, Coach Bud has done some amazing things. He unlocked something in Giannis that, you know, that man has said he is forever grateful for. That being said, there is evidence of him not being good at making adjustments when he needs to in these tight matchups. But I think that's a story when we get into the offseason. We talk about these coaching hot seats and carousels and who's going where. Because there's going to be moves. And there's rumblings that some other names are on the move. And I will leave that for another time. Or else we're going to go down a wormhole. But you brought up Miami regarding Budenholzer getting fired, and I'm going to slide right into that, that Eastern Conference Final. I know it hurts you. Miami knocked out your Knicks. But here, let me set it up for you real quick. Okay. Miami fell to the 8th seed because they lost the first game of the play-in. They won 2 in a row to get that. Okay. Upset Milwaukee. Everybody was like, wow. Okay. Knicks should beat them. Because, yes, the Knicks got further than anybody expected. But, hey, it's Miami. The Knicks should beat them. We've done a bit of a postmortem offline for that one, off the record. I won't twist the knife.
No, we can move on from that.
And Boston has done everything people expected them to do. They expected this to be Boston-Milwaukee, but it's Boston-Miami.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the interesting thing. You look at their season, they split 4 games. Boston took the first 2. First game was kind of close, 111-104. Second game was 134-121. And then Miami took the next 2, 120-116, pretty close. And then they mucked it up 98-95. I think that's, if they play that kind of a game, Miami takes the series. If Miami gets 4 games where both teams are under 100, Miami's going to the NBA Finals. Before I ask a couple of questions, I want your initial take.
My initial take is here we go again. This is 3 out of 4 years these two teams meet each other again in a conference final. And if you remember that conference final from last year, I mean, Jimmy was 6 inches a front rim last second shot in the game 7 from sending the Heat to an upset over Boston last year. So if you're Boston, you better have your guard up because that same guy is back and he's playing even better than he was last year when he almost stole a NBA Finals appearance. I think this is going to be an ultra competitive series because, like you said, you look at the season series. These are 2 teams that just sort of match up well against each other, and it's usually fireworks. Now you would look at this Miami roster and with some of the injuries, and you would think they might be in for, might be a tough way to hold. But Jimmy Butler counts for 3 people right now. When you look at him versus Tatum and Brown. So I think it's going to be fun.
I got a couple notes, and we'll go back and forth on this one real quick. We're going to start with the big gun. Jason Tatum is clicking. He willed Boston into this finals. Game 6 and Game 7 was him. it was basically looking at Steph dropping 50 in the first round, being like, "Oh, hey, that's cute. I'm gonna drop 51." He's really, really got it going on. And the second one, and this is where I think it's going to be the battle of the two heavyweight punchers. Like you said, Jimmy Butler's playing better than he was. This is the reason Jimmy Butler was brought to they wanted him in Miami. He makes this entire team better. And we talked about it earlier in the playoffs, that they also made sure that this roster is full of dogs that compete the way he competes. They made it complementary to him in addition to what was there. And so these two are going to be swinging at each other. And the third and final point I want you to kind of talk on is my concern when I look at this is this year's Heat team, regardless of what they've done, healthy enough and deep enough to challenge Boston after two really grueling series?
Yeah, so the answer to the last question is yes, because the pedigree of the Miami Heat would just tell you so. I hate using and it has something to do with me being a Knicks fan. It makes me want to vomit when you say Heat culture. I hate it. I hate that phrase. I hate using that term, Heat culture. So what I will say is there is a sort of championship pedigree that starts with Eric Spoelstra, who is in that conversation of one of the great coaches of all time. Just when you see how often since LeBron has left that they've continued to sort of reinvent the wheel and find these guys and plug and play, and they don't really skip a beat. Even if they don't have a great regular season, they still find a way to be just a pest. And when you get to the postseason, and all that starts with the second point, Jimmy Butler. What's going to be tough for them in this series is, I think, not so much the injuries, but can Jimmy continue to sort of will the team the victories when the rest of those pieces aren't quite clicking the way they need them to, especially on the road. Because the difference with what they saw in the first two rounds compared to what you're going to get with Boston is Boston has 4 guys they can throw at Jimmy. That of the first two rounds, the first round was Drew Holiday. If it wasn't Drew on Jimmy, Milwaukee didn't really have a defender that could really stop him from getting to the spots on the floor that he wanted to get to. In the second round, the Knicks really didn't have anybody who could really stop him. Yes, he was slowed by the ankle, but Josh Hart did his best, but he's really not he's a good defender, but he's not you wouldn't consider him like a stopper. Now when you get to Boston, you're going to see Marcus Smart. You're going to see Jaylen Brown. You're going to see Malcolm Brogdon, who has been exceptional in this postseason. And you're going to see Jason Tatum and his 6'9", 6'10" wingspan if they need to. So it's going to be tougher for Jimmy in this round just because of the bodies that Boston throws at you. And because of that, the real key to this series to me is Bam Adebayo. Because of the fact that, one, defensively, he's got a lot to deal with. Because when you look at Boston's bigs, yes, Al Horford is a pest on the O boards, but you got to deal with him in that spot up three-point shooting that he just daggers teams. But then you also got to deal with Robert Williams, who's an athletic leaper who just runs the floor like a gazelle and is just there for lobs all just at any given moment. Then on top of that, then you're talking about when Boston gets into that pick and roll action. Now you might get caught on a switch with Jason Tatum, and you got to guard him, which is something he's capable of. So they're going to need him to sort of be what he was also at the end of that series when Julius Randle was garbage, but Bam Adebayo then sort of kind of found his form. They're going to need him to sort of be that second piece for Jimmy. Because we know what Jimmy's gonna be a dog, but you're gonna need some help. He's gonna need help, and it's probably gonna be more than likely from Bam. And the last point I'll touch on is, yes, Jason Tatum looked really good in that second half of Game 6, and he went off in Game 7. But I'm not convinced that he's not over those first half shooting struggles. He has shot Boston into trouble with the way he shot the ball in the first and second quarters of some of these games in the postseason. Hopefully he put that behind him. But if he gets off to these slow starts, Jimmy Butler will make life difficult for Boston in this series.
All right. Yeah. And prediction time. I'm going to keep it short and sweet right here. I think these teams are a little more evenly matched than I would like to admit. They're going to say, oh, but it's an 8 seed and this and that. It was a BS 8 seed. We know this team didn't belong in the 8th seed. They played themselves into the play-in tournament instead of being in the top 6. So I think this goes 7. And I selfishly, I'm going to say selfishly, I'm going to pick Miami. And I'll get more into why in a minute.
I will say I think it's going to be a long series as well. But when I look at the way Boston closed out Game 6, coming from behind and then kind of putting that game away in Philly, and then what they did in Game 7, I think Boston sort of rediscovered themselves a bit at the end of that. At the end of that Philly series, that I think is going to give them the momentum they need. I'm going to go Boston in 6. I think Boston wins this game. I gotta give, as much as I heard it, I gotta give Jimmy at least 2. I gotta give Jimmy 2, just out of pure respect. I gotta give Jimmy 2. I gotta give Spoelstra 2, because he's going to make life difficult for that Boston offense. But I just think Boston is ready. I think this could be their year. And, they'd have a difficult task in the finals, but I'm going to go Boston in 6.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, honestly, either way, I think it sets up for an amazing storyline in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes us to the West side. You got the Lakers and the Nuggets. I was surprised because I forgot that they split the season series. And then I took a deeper look into it, and I was like, the Lakers could have taken 3. AD was hurt when they played the 4th game. LeBron was held out of that 4th game. And I'm going to say they only lost by 13. So that was an interesting one. And the Lakers had beaten them 2 in a row, including the game where AD got hurt. And they won that one by 18. So there's definitely something there. And that was a weaker, thin rotation. Now, yes, they had more big men on that rotation. Thomas Bryant actually played really well after AD went down. They don't have him, but they still have Wenyen Gabriel. They've got a couple of pieces that they can probably plug in. So I'm not super worried looking at that side of it. And knowing that when they were not as deep, they took 2 out of 4 and could have taken 3. But the 3 notes that stand out for me here is AD versus the Joker. That's what it is. And Davis is probably the one player athletic enough to neutralize Jokic. His skills counter Davis's defensive skills counter Jokic's offensive skills almost to a T when they're both on. And if they play to a neutral, then it comes down to the backcourt battle. Donovan Mitchell's going to get his. But now you've got a rotating backcourt, and how's it going to step up? Are these backcourts going to actually be able to fill in for what Jokic and AD can't do? So I had 4 points. Third point is you've got LeBron and AD, again, second series in a row where they have to play every other day. There is no extra day of rest. There is no off day. Especially considering they're traveling to Denver, going to altitude. The good thing is games 1 and 2, they have that acclimation period because they closed it out in 6. The issue will be after game 4, going back to Denver If I was the staff, I would have a flight booked, or I'd have the charter ready for midnight, right after that game. We're flying to Denver. You sleep on the plane, sleep there. You know, I'm going to give you an extra 24 hours to get acclimated. That's me. And then the last one, and this kind of touches on that backcourt battle, but it's more. It's consistency from the others. You know what your stars are going to give you. Are we going to get consistency? I'm not just talking about step up here, step up there. We need consistency. And the first team to actually give that consistency, I believe, is going to take the series. I'm going to kick it to you now.
Yeah, so to sort of double back on what you were saying about Jokic and AD, it's interesting to me because it's hard for me to have seen what Jokic has done the last 3 years, even in games where he's played against AD, and think that as great as Anthony Davis has been defensively in this postseason, I'm finally at the place where I'm willing to say no one's really going to stop Jokic from doing what he wants on the court, because the thing that he does on the court that's the most important to why Denver is so good is not even the points that he gets. It's how he distributes and gets the ball to others. He controls the game in a way that we've never seen a center really do. Like, this man is Magic Johnson on the floor most nights, where before he even gets going with his offense, he's got 5, 6, 7 assists and a handful of rebounds. So to me, a bigger issue for me in terms of AD is, can he be aggressive enough to get Jokic in foul trouble, to get him off the floor? Because I think that's almost as important as what he can do defensively. Because if the Lakers play through AD and he can take it to Jokic and put him in positions to where he picks up 2 fouls 6 minutes into the game, and now they've got to decide whether you take him off the floor or not, or risk it and see if hope he doesn't pick up a third, I think could really be a decisive part in how this series sort of plays out. But to that point with AD, now you're talking about going to Denver, you're talking about altitude, you're talking about having to play every other day. It's no secret when you look at sort of how the playoff played out, is that he'd have a great game, then he'd have a down game. He'd have a great game, then he'd have a down game. Where it felt like it was hard, maybe on his body or whatever it was, that it was hard for him to sort of bring that consistent dominance every game. And they're going to need him to not be up and down in this series, because the one thing we know about Denver is they come in waves, and they come in waves every game. To my next point is on LeBron. LeBron has got to shoot the basketball well in this series. He has to, because before we even get to how the others affect the game, if LeBron is able to kind of dominate his matchup, it makes everything else on that offensive end of the floor flow for the Lakers, which then gets Reeves easier looks and easier opportunities at the basket, because the defense has to pay attention to Braun. Now, all of a sudden, if you bring Lonnie Walker in, he might find some opportunities for some open looks. Then Dennis Schroeder gets himself involved in the offense a little better that way. So you're right. The others do have to step up, especially when you're talking about this Denver team, when they've been the number one team in the West all year, because when you look at that roster, yeah, it's Murray, but it's also Gordon, and it's also Jeff Green. And then they come at you with KCP, who the Laker fans know very well. Like, this team, and by the way, and if one of those guys gets into foul trouble, they've got Reggie Jackson, who Clipper fans wish they had still had during their playoff run, and wish they could have had that guy back. So they come at you, and that guy, Thomas Bryant, who is doing really well for the Lakers, he's also here in Denver as well. This roster is 10, 11, 12 deep, and they use every last one of those guys. So you're going to need LeBron and AD to be on their game. You're going to need Lonnie Walker to continue to play with that sort of confidence when they give him the minutes that he stole away from Beasley. So it's going to be fun. But I will say, I agree with Nikola Jokic because he said today after shoot around that this is the new team. this Laker team is it's not a fluke that they're here. When you look at who they beat in the playoffs, and when you look at the way they play, he's like, this is not the team. When we watch the tape, this ain't the team that we played against early this year. They have guys now on the floor that they can just switch everything and make life miserable for you. Golden State, poor Golden State at times and we know they are willing to take the extra pass to find that open three. And there were just times in this Lakers series, it just wasn't there. You could pass the ball 30 times and you weren't going to find the look. So it's going to be on their defense. Everything in this series starts with the Lakers defense.
Yeah, it does. And I believe the defense continues to play the way it's played this season, especially in the postseason. And I'm going to say it. Fandom aside, I honestly think these two teams match up very well. And if the Lakers take one, preferably game one, I think it's the Lakers in 6. I don't think it goes 7, only because if the Lakers take game 1 or 2, they're not losing in LA. I don't see it, which means game 5 they'll probably drop in Denver and come back and take it in LA. That's how I see it. If they take game 1 or 2, what do you think?
I think, out of respect for what Denver has sort of built with this roster, I think the Lakers, to me, their top end talent. When you have LeBron and AD playing on all cylinders, and you look at the way the others do kind of step up for them, I do like the Lakers in this series, but I think it's going to be tough. I think this is going to be one of those series where I think Denver could take the first 2 at home, then the Lakers could come and take their 2 at home, and then we'd be looking at a best of 3. So I'm going to go Lakers because I do think we're going to get a Celtics-Lakers finals, which would be fun. But I think this is going to be this has a chance to be one of those moments where, for me, a person like me who has been the president of the LeBron James fan club, I think this might be one of those times where we get to have that signature LeBron performance in a game 7 where he goes to Denver and puts that team away. And I think the Lakers are going to take it in 7.
6 or 7. If the Lakers take it, I'm happy.
Oh, yeah.
But what I was hinting towards earlier, I'll touch on right now. Either way, it's a storyline. If Denver gets past the Lakers, this is their shot at a title.
Mm-hmm.
If the Lakers get into the final, you've either got the NBA salivating over themselves for Lakers Boston. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be crazy if you think the NBA isn't having wet dreams looking at this Final Four like Lakers Boston. But they're also very happy at the potential of Lakers Miami because there's story there. And this Miami team has a following. And as a Laker fan, I'd love for LA to go in, spank the crap out of Miami, and just bully ball them, because I don't think Miami can handle Lakers bully ball.
Yeah, no. If you're the NBA, you're sitting pretty in a good spot with these 2 conference finals, because of the fact that, and even though as we want the Lakers to get there, even if for some reason they don't win, this has an opportunity for Jokic to then sort of be coronated as the guy, right? Because this is a guy who's had 1 back-to-back MVPs, but a lot of guys, he doesn't necessarily get the respect he deserves because he's in Denver. He's not in New York. He's not in LA. He's not in one of those markets. I think if he got to the finals, it would be the first time that he really got to showcase on the national stage. Like, no, this is why I've been that guy for the last few years. But no, they don't want. Listen, they want LeBron in that finals. But yeah, it's going to be fun. I do think a cool story about all of this is somehow we have wrapped around to the 2 conference finals that we had in the bubble and in 2020, and it took a little bit to get there, right? Some of these rosters look a little different. Jamal Murray had a knee injury, and this is the first time he's been back to being that guy since the bubble. Yeah, so it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think both of these series are going to provide spectacular comments, and I can't wait to watch.
I got to correct myself. Earlier, I said Donovan Mitchell. I meant Jamal Murray. That is terrible.
Wow.
Goodness gracious me. Goodness gracious. Well, I'm gonna make an excuse here. It's a little late for me, just a little bit. But again, everybody, we tell you to comment, we tell you to, interact. You can yell at me and tell me, it's Murray and not Mitchell. I'll be okay with that. I'm sorry. I'll fall on my sword here. But on that note, it's an exciting conference finals leading up. The next 10 days, 2 weeks are going to be super exciting. Mm-hmm. We're here for it. And, we're going to keep providing you stuff, our views on what's going on. As always, if you like what you're seeing, like what you're listening to, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You'll get notified every time we drop one of these. And we just keep trying to put it out for you.
Yeah, man. Like I said, it's a fun time of the year. We enjoy doing these things. We enjoy having these conversations. So join us in the conversations and keep listening, keep watching, like and subscribe, man. We appreciate the love that we get out there, guys.
All right, everybody. Catch you next time.
Peace.